Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest Bettcast. In light of the DfE's guidance that stipulates that remote learning needs to be as close to live learning as possible, we are delighted to bring you into an in-depth case study from Ajenta and USP College that digs into how this forward-thinking two-campus FE college supports high-quality, real-time learning, both remotely and face-to-face. As always, we want the session as practical as possible. Please do post a few questions in the chat box and we'll get to as many of them as we can. You will also find a really helpful handout, which you can download at any time during the session. And we will be recording the session, so you'll be free to review or to share with colleagues afterwards. Now, I'm really pleased to introduce you to our speakers today and to our chair for the day, John Wilson, who is the co-founder and the CEO of Ajenta. So handing over to you, John.
Thanks very much, Elle. I do appreciate it. So hi, everybody. Welcome to this session that we're hosting today to talk a little bit more about USP's challenge and project delivering innovative immersive classrooms. Just to kick this off and do a little round of introductions first, I'd like to introduce you to Dan Pearson, the principal and CEO of USP College. We've also got James Parker, the head of education improvement for USP College. And of course, we've got Christelle McCarthy, the project manager. Christelle's the one that has been dealing with every single aspect of the project so far from a technical and a project point of view. Yeah. So just to kind of kick off a little bit, we've got some slides here just to kind of give us a kind of visual overview and a kind of representation of what we do at Ajenta, what VCN is, and then we'll go into USP to kind of understand a little bit more about the project, ongoing project as well. So if I could just give you a kind of quick, in a nutshell, cover of what we do. So VCN is what previously used to be called Janet Video Conferencing Services. Was started in 1989. So there's quite a lot of legacy with the service before we acquired it a few years ago from JISC. We have been rebuilding and redesigning the platform to be a global online community for teaching and learning. It's the only platform approved and hosted on the UK Janet network. The Janet network is the education network that supports access from education, further education, higher education, and research organisations throughout the UK. The concept of this platform is to be able to connect people over a common connected platform, bridging technologies together, things like Teams, Google Hangouts, WebEx, lots of VLEs, LMS, all that kind of stuff across a common platform. As you probably understand, within the industry just now, there's lots of different kinds of digital technologies just now. Some of them are really good, some of them not particularly there yet. The concept of what we do is to try and bridge all these technologies together across a common platform to allow a continuous service for the delivery of teaching and learning. Yeah. What we try to do and what we're doing across many of our organisations, we support just over 2,000 organisations and institutions across the UK, from schools to further education colleges, higher education universities, and research organisations. What we try to deliver is what we call impact hybrid learning. Now, in the industry just now, and particularly on the back of COVID, we've seen lots of different learning modalities, from blended learning, remote learning, distance learning, hybrid learning, that kind of thing. What we try to do is blend all of them together in a hybrid learning situation to support all different kinds of pedagogies. The concept of this is to try and enhance and extend curriculum, real-time engagement, interaction, and to support integration with existing learning technologies, environments, video conferencing platforms, and software, that kind of thing. Now, excuse me, what's core and what's so important with any kind of learning modality, be it blended learning or remote learning, is to harness the human aspect of teaching. You know, you can have all the best technologies in the world, but if you don't try and get as close to human experience as possible, you're missing the core aspects and the core importance of learning. What we try to do is we try and replicate the typical classroom environment. So this can maintain a continuity for students and teachers. So what we do is teach out from the learning space. Yeah, that allows us to retain the human element and also provides engagement and interaction from the students there as well. Okay. Now, obviously, I'm conscious I don't want to talk too much about what we do, but if you do have any questions about the sort of programs that we deliver, the technology on the back of it, then we're more than happy to answer questions throughout or at the end of the session. What I'd like to do now is hand you over to Dan Pearson from USP College, who can talk a little bit more detail about the program that they've created and the results and perhaps what you can do to avoid some of the pitfalls in the industry just now. Dan.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think that's a nice way of saying Dan's learned the hard way, made a whole bunch of mistakes, very costly mistakes, eventually getting to the position we're in now, which obviously I'm delighted to share with you. I believe, has the video been shown already? Chris? Yeah, okay. So we've got a couple of colleagues here, as I say, James Parker, who's sort of guru in the room, one of the main users, does a lot of the training of teachers. So really, if there's any direct teaching and learning questions, James would be delighted to answer them. And then obviously we've got Christelle McCarthy, who same sort of note, will answer things with regards to the project and the implementation phase. And obviously I'm happy to pick anything up also.
Dan, I'll pop the video on.
Okay.
For students, what we try to do is to look at the most innovative, the most up-to-date teaching techniques and technologies, and then bring these into classrooms for students, giving them the skills to really sort of make a difference when it comes to applying for jobs, going for university courses in the future. The latest innovations that we have currently at the to do is to look at the most innovative, the most up-to-date teaching techniques and technologies, and then bring these into classrooms for students, giving them the skills to really sort of make a difference.
Looks like we're having some glitches there.
Applying for jobs, going for university.
Maybe we can try that again in a moment. So if we just move on to the next slide, Christelle, that'll be fine.
Technology, eh?
I know, well, this is it. Okay, well, what I'm going to start with is the problem. And to do this, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background, really, of where we're situated. So we're a GFE. We're based in Essex, and we serve around 4,000 students, ranging from, obviously, BTEC, A-level, apprentices, higher education. So the full range that you'd expect. The colleges, we merged back in 2017, and this is when really I started that journey, because that's when my problems began. Civic and Palmer's were the original college names, and both were traditional sixth form colleges, albeit Civic had redesignated as a GFE along the way. I started at Civic, and then we quickly went into the whole merger process, and we merged with Palmer's. And what I found myself with was two colleges, both alike in dignity, both very similar. However, they were in different parts of the journey, because I'd had the benefit of already starting that improvement journey at Civic. But what we found, we had obviously one college moving a lot quicker than the other towards gaining better outcomes, better pedagogy, better teaching and learning practices, and the other college needed a lot more work. So instantly, I had a lack of parity between the students' experience. So one college, two separate campuses, but a lack of parity. So it was a bit of a lottery and where you went. We had high staff to income ratios. As I say, they had a sixth form legacy and a sixth form hangover. And if there's any sixth form college leaders out there, then you'll know this. Staff ratios are very high, and they swallow up an awful lot of your budget. So I had to overcome that problem as well, because clearly I had to get the finances right. I had to create parity, and I had to basically deal with what were quite small group numbers in certain subjects, and mainly surrounded the A-level subjects, actually the A-level topics. And I guess this would ring true with what I'm saying, with lots of people out there who are grappling with this. So I had poor economies of scale. We can just go to the next slide, please. So there was a few things I had to try to resolve. So the first thing I thought I had to come up with was a way to reduce all those gaps I've mentioned. So how could I have a student coming to the Civic campus and getting exactly the same deal as a student going to the Palmer's campus? This wasn't the case. So I'll give you a prime example, and I'll pick out a law qualification. So students studying law at the Civic campus had a much better experience. They were more likely to be successful. However, both sets of students are coming on the same qualification level. So that was an immediate thing that I just couldn't have. I had to resolve it. One of the things that I wanted was a seamless link between the two campuses, and the rooms had to have a wow factor. I didn't want a student to go into the room and feel shortchanged. So I know I had to link them up. At first, I thought the first solution would be a standard video conferencing suite. But I also was keen that the rooms had to have lots of interoperability. So they had to have something that was going to allow the sort of pedagogy that you could enjoy through classroom-based learning and group learning, albeit over video conferencing type delivery model. So there was quite a few things that I had to have. I wanted the room to feel like a natural extension of the space the group of students was in. So there was no feeling of a lack of parity between where you were. I didn't want one group of students feeling shortchanged if they were both in, being served by one lecturer based in one campus. So there was quite a lot of things I had to have in there, and that journey began. And if you just move to the next slide, I can tell you I began by making a lot of mistakes. And the first mistake I made was by having a whole bunch of AV companies in, and the AV companies promising me the world. Them saying, yeah, we can link your two campuses up. We can allow you to have one teacher teaching two sets of students at once. And this is what we'll give to you. So we went down the route. It was very expensive. So what I found is then we'd have to value engineer the overall look and feel of the rooms down, because the kits, the hardware, etc. is so expensive. I also found it was over complex. So we had all a Polycom setup. Nothing against the Polycom setups, by the way, but it was over engineered for what it needed to do. And what I found is very quickly, lecturers trying to deliver in the room to two groups of students would start to face immediate problems and lots of snagging issues. So effectively, we tried, James came, was really trying to do everything to make those rooms work. And I come to a point where I said, right, I've got to get back to the drawing board here. This just isn't quite cutting it. So if we just move on to the next slide. This is where I eventually came across the partnership with Ajenta, and went along and said, look, this is what I need to achieve. I don't want your standard online learning, because I want students to be able to enjoy the benefits of being able to buzz off the peers. And the sound needs to be seamless. The image quality needs to be fantastic. I want all this interoperability, and I want multiple screens totally surrounding the room to give that fully immersive effect. And that's what the problem I presented again. I said I didn't quite get it, and these were the reasons why. So we went through this process, and through a little bit of tweaking, we eventually got where we needed to be. And we started with that experimentation. We really started then saying, okay, let's start to put groups through the space and let's see how it goes. I don't know if, John, you want to say a little bit more about the immersive room at this stage?
No. No, you're doing a fine job so far. I don't want to get into too much technical detail just now. And that's the whole purpose of this. You shouldn't have to focus on technology. You shouldn't have to think about technology from a teaching and learning perspective. The technology should work. It should be as invisible as the carpet, the walls, and the windows in the room. That's the core aspect here. Is that we need to support the pedagogy and support the natural teaching method, rather than it just being another barrier in the way. Because technology is a barrier. It's difficult to use, it's cumbersome, and it can cause a lot of problems. And we're talking about teaching kids, teaching students, teaching higher education students as well. You need it to be as seamless and as invisible as possible. And just one thing that we do in the immersive rooms and any other of the classrooms that we do is that we don't have buttons. There's no buttons to press. You walk into the room, it's all scheduled and automatic, and that's the key thing here. We don't want any touch screens. We don't want any buttons there. We want to respect that natural teaching method, and that's the core element of what we do. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, and actually that echoes a lot of the conversations where I was saying to John, I want this, I want that, I want this feature. And yes, that was provided initially, but with the pushback constantly from Ajenta to say, the simpler you make it, the more effective it'll be. So we had to come up with a sort of somewhere in between. Yes, it still had to have plenty of functionality where students could jump up and interact with the screens whilst receiving instruction from the lecturer and live feedback, being able to enjoy the sorts of competitive type quiz tasks and watch live dissections of a heart on a visualizer, which we've actually used before, and I've seen James and others in there dissecting a heart, and students having to label what the aspects of the heart is, and then there'll be a quiz, and both campuses are being pitted off against each other. Really active, fantastic learning with virtually no sound lag, and no sound lag at all, and great high quality vision and visuals for the students. So very soon, what I eventually ended up with, if we just go to the next slide, please, Christel, was this fantastic space where students didn't feel shortchanged. They could go in, they could access the lecturer, they could ask live questions, the progress could be checked, they could be assessed. All those things that we know are very important with teaching and learning and today could still occur without students actually feeling, well, hang on a minute, I haven't got the lecturer in front of me all the time. They're over at the other campus. Now, I've got the ability to have the lecturer flip-flopping every other week between the two campuses. So students will get that benefit of seeing the lecturer face-to-face every other week, and the other time they're in the campuses. So now I'm at a stage where the rooms are fully utilised. I've made huge amounts of savings where I've not had to replace lecturers. By the way, I probably wouldn't have been able to get those lecturers anyway. So, for example, I lose a physics lecturer. I've got one retained at one of the campuses. I have that physics lecturer now teaching to two groups across the campuses at the same time. So I'm halving my costs. Even if it went out, by the way, with the teaching shortages, it'd be incredibly difficult for me to find that teacher as it is. So clearly now we've managed to put small groups in there. We've now got decent economies of scale, and we're way down the line, a good few years down the line now of using these rooms and really learning everything that works, the things that don't work, and we're refining the teaching training package all the time as we go along. It's very difficult. I wish you could see the spaces, and it's a pity the video didn't work. Maybe we could have another crack at the end before we start getting into questions, really. But I'll just talk to you about the next steps, what we're looking to do now. Some student feedback there. I hope you can see that. Obviously, as you'd imagine, we're constantly taking student feedback. Questions I always get asked is, how do the students find it? Well, the buzz off it, it gives them a wow factor. I hate to use that word, it's the new norm, but actually, this was way before we went into lockdown and all those things. But actually, students were used to learning through screens and having multiple bits of media coming at them. So actually, they really enjoyed it. And I didn't find that was an issue at all. Teachers became more and more confident in using it. And range from your teachers who go in, plug the laptop in, do your typical chalk and talk, a bit like I'm doing now, showing a PowerPoint and talking to it, to ones who'd be really interactive. And, you know, we're really working with them. So we've made huge leaps and bounds, so much so we've just purchased 2 more rooms because they're at capacity. And it's great for the whole COVID situation as well. Where we can have students dialing in from home. All the sessions are recorded, so they can watch catch-up sessions and so on and so forth. But yeah, my next steps now I've been working on is trying to engage other colleges. And the reason I've been doing this is because I'm looking to create a strategic network where we can work and share and solve the teaching and learning shortage by other colleges having the immersive rooms, us being able to provide teaching for them, or they provide teaching for us. You get the idea. So we're currently working with a number of colleges now who are at varying stages of getting spaces installed, and they want some further maths from us. We've got plenty of maths teachers, which you know is very rare. So we're going to beam maths to them. They're going to beam A-level economics to us because we can't find an A-level economics teacher. We're going to get some AAT beamed to us from somewhere else. So this is a growing network, and I'd love to hear from you if you're keen to get involved and hear more. We're also purchased a whole bunch of single screen rooms with high quality cameras from Ajenta to really help us cope with the problems that we're having with COVID at the moment. So we now have the ability for live streaming to take place and students to engage with live teaching if they can't get in, if they've been asked to isolate and all the weird and wonderful things we're dealing with COVID. So I hope that's given some sort of clarity on what the space is and what it can do. Happy to answer questions now. We'll have one more crack at the video. Hopefully it'll work. If not,
let's see if we can play the video so it has a better kind of visual representation. It should be fine now. Christelle, do you want to give it a shot?
For students, what we try to do is to look at the most innovative, the most up-to-date teaching techniques and technologies, and then bring these into classrooms for students, giving them the skills to really sort of make a difference when it comes to applying for jobs, going for university courses.
If I could just interject to say, this isn't our software.
The latest innovations that we have at the college, that we've been trialling recently at the college, are in the field.
No, I believe they've had a fire alarm in the London office, and they've had to do
so augmented
all this media was going to be streamed from. So that's a shame, but we're happy if anybody wants the link, we can send the link out. Or if you go onto the USP website and see it.
Students to really understand what a cell is.
Questions then, I guess. That doesn't look like play.
Yeah. So we've there are a few questions here. If we can go through them in order of when people have asked them. So Andy Webb, hi Andy, has asked, what is the Janet network? Good question. So the Joint Academic Network is a high-speed secure network connecting education, research, public sector and government organisations across the UK. It's a secure network that can only be used by those kinds of organisations. There's about 20,000 points connected over this high-speed network. What I'll do, if you just search for Janet Network on the web, it will give you more information on the points. But if you're a further education college, higher education university, a research organisation, government or school, then the chances are you have a Janet connection. Generally, Janet connections are held and managed by the IT team. Yeah, so a lot of the time, IT team like to keep things to themselves for good reason. But it's a high-speed network that connects all these organizations, and we're the only video platform that has access on this network to connect these different kinds of organizations to each other. The benefits of that is that, for example, if I'm a college connecting with another college, I don't have to go out to the public internet. It's a direct connection between the two. So that has significant improvements on quality, things like resolution, latency, frame rate, but also the added layer of security on that as well, because you're not having to send video traffic and audio traffic over the public internet. Is using the Janet network to do that. Okay, so that's the added benefit. I hope that answers the question. Mike Buchanan, sorry,
just to come in there, I think that was one of the things we found. We've got all the images beamed onto huge 89-inch screens, and to try to do that with Teams and even the original Polycom setup we had, you start getting problems with the image etc. when it's scaled up. Yeah, so I backed that up. Yeah, we found that also at the college.
So sorry, can we play that video now? Elle, can we play that video now? Yeah.
For students, what we try to do is to look at the most innovative, the most up-to-date teaching techniques and technologies, and then bring these into classrooms for students, giving them the skills to really sort of make a difference when it comes to applying for jobs, going for university courses in the future. The latest innovations that we have currently at the college, or that we've been trialling recently at the college, are in the fields of virtual reality, augmented reality and immersive learning. So augmented reality, we've worked quite closely with our maths department, so it helps students really get to grips and understand those tricky maths concepts. Virtual reality we've used a lot within our science department to get students to really understand what a cell is, so they can dive straight into a cell and just really sort of enhance their knowledge. I'm a biology teacher, so we've had sports students over at our Palmer's campus, A-level biology students here at this campus, and we've done live heart dissections, so both students, both across all the campuses, can see that happening in real time. The room we're currently sitting in is our immersive room, and this allows us to use our best practitioners, our best teachers, to deliver sessions across multiple campuses. So all of the screens, we've got 5 screens in this room, and they're all fully immersive. So we've got interactive whiteboards, we can throw videos up on the screens, students can share work through the Wi-Fi in the room. So if a teacher's teaching, they can instantly see what a student across multiple campuses is working on, and then offer support with that. It allows us to, again, bring in experts from other fields, so from universities, from industry, and they can link straight into the room and deliver sessions to our students to give them those employability skills and that understanding of industry that they wouldn't get normally in a standard session. Key employability skills that our students get through using our immersive rooms are communication, so they get to talk to their peers across campus using the technology. Presentation skills, so they'll be working closely with their partners, with their groups at the campus and across the other campuses to present their findings, whatever they've come up with in lessons. By using the technology, using the different immersive techniques we have, it really helps to sort of hone that, so they have that foundation to then go on and learn more in the future.
Good, excellent. We've got some other questions. Shall we go through the questions? There's quite a lot of questions.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Elle, want to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Would you guys like me to read out a couple from the chat for you?
Yeah, if you read them and then we'll answer them. How about that?
Fantastic, great.
Yeah.
And thanks so much for your patience with the technical difficulties today, guys. We have had a fire alarm in our London office, which is why things have been a little bit slower than usual, but thank you for your patience.
Sorry.
Yeah, so one interesting question from Gwyn was, for equity to both campuses, did you experiment with putting the teacher in a completely separate room and feeding into both rooms simultaneously? Or do you think that it perhaps has an impact on student engagement, Does one room favour from having the teacher in the room, and is that perhaps a different experience? What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is a question we always get asked, and I'll bring James in a moment. And we are doing a much bigger piece of research on it. But so far, the answer to that is there's been no differences with levels of engagement. We do have a facilitator, I should have said this, we have a facilitator in the room that doesn't have the teacher in. But obviously they're at a much lower hourly cost than a highly skilled lecturer. If, as I keep saying, you can actually get a highly skilled lecturer. So we do have someone there supporting and facilitating the learning. But no, there's been no notable or markable difference with the results like there was before we started it. So, for example, when they had different teachers, there was always marked differences. There was always huge gulfs. The minute they had the same teacher, that closed, be it whether they were in the receiving room or the room with the live teacher in it. So there's been no clear evidence to suggest or give us that. Like I say, we're developing and doing research. We did try to get research done on it, but actually, because it's such new it's not new technology, because it's a relatively new approach, there's not a lot out there at all, and there's not enough data yet for it to be truly meaningful. But like I say, we've been running full qualifications through it now for best part of 2 full academic years. So we're starting to get that. So the answer is no.
If I could just add some flavour to that, obviously just on the VC community. So we work with quite a lot of local authorities, local education authorities, as well as colleges and universities. And what we've seen is that there is a big demand to be able to deliver to multiple classes at the same time from one class. So there's different models. One of the models that works quite effectively is teaching from one class where you've got, for example, maybe 5 to maybe 20, maybe 30 students in it, and teaching out to other classes at the same time. That's a common part of what we do just now across the VC community. But the concept of the teaching pod is also growing in demand as well. So the ability to be able to teach from a purpose-built cupboard, and when I say purpose-built, I mean a whiteboard or a blackboard with a laptop and a webcam, to teach out to multiple classes at the same time. And obviously the important part of this is, how do we do that and still maintain that kind of engagement, that interaction, that excitement from the students, not losing interest, you know? Because at the end of the day, it's technology, and it doesn't matter how good the technology is, a lot of the time they will be feeling shortchanged. You know, why can't we have a teacher in the room, that kind of thing. So it's all about adding digital excitement to the teaching aspect of this, to make sure that they are engaged, you know. And that does support different pedagogies, from the kind of one-to-one class, the sort of shared learning pedagogy, the peer-based learning as well. Because if you've got multiple college classrooms or learning spaces, then they've got the ability to be able to share and learn from each other. So it's a different kind of teaching modality, but it's one that is growing in trend. I think it's quite early just now to kind of understand the research from that, but we are working with some institutions and some collaboratives on creating some of that research and putting it into a white paper. You know, because it's so, as Dan said, the technology isn't new, but the approach to learning and the approach to this is new. So it's a huge demand on the back of COVID. So I mean, we're only what, 3, 4, 6 months in. You know, I would see by the end of this year and by early next year, there will be some research studies done on the effectiveness and the output and the learning pathways on this as well. So hopefully that'll be quite soon.
I think as well, just to sort of further emphasise that, you know, back to the DFE's sudden sort of reasoning, saying we want it to be as close to classroom teaching as possible. So now we do have the ability, even, you know, when it's not necessarily in the immersive room, but the beaming in, we've still got a group of students participating on a screen and a group of students in the classroom, or the teacher in the classroom still being able to do that sort of full level of engagement. But James, I don't know if you want to come in there, being the probably the heaviest user of the space, or certainly one of them, and certainly someone who does a lot of training and deals with teaching and teachers and students all the time using the space.
Yeah, so I'll try and answer a few of the other questions that have popped up as well. So there's a lot of stuff in there about teaching and learning. One of the key things we've done is put on a training plan for all of our teachers. So initially you walk in there, maybe it is a little bit overwhelming seeing all of these screens, all this technology there. But the way it works is, like John said, is it's all automated. So at its most basic level, the tutor can walk in, plug in their laptop, and they can present their PowerPoint. They don't have to press any buttons. They don't have to join the session. It all automates for them. And then they're able to teach across both campuses. So they'll be looking directly ahead of them at their class, and behind that class, they've got the camera and they can see the class at the other campus behind them. The audio is seamless, so they can question the students at the other class. We have, like Dan said, we've got a facilitator at the other campus, so we train up the facilitators as well. So they're there talking to the students. And the one thing we do train the students is they need to project a little bit more than they would do perhaps normally. So there is a little bit of a tiny little training curve there for students. We use a lot of different applications, a lot of different technology, so students can use their mobile phones. There's lots of different apps that we've used, so things like Nearpod, there's things like AnswerPod, there's Kahoot, there's Quizlet. So tutors have got to, we've been working with our tutors a lot in terms of making them adapt. They've got to change from their normal stand in front of a PowerPoint and lecture at students. We've got to get them to think a little bit outside of the box. But there's a lot of different bits of technology we've used. A lot of whiteboards, so interactive whiteboards, online whiteboards, so the students can be working on them. So a student at one campus, there'll be a group all working on one whiteboard, but they'll actually be paired up with a group of students at the other campus, and we're using these interactive whiteboards, so whatever they write, they can see with each other. You can integrate things like Microsoft Teams into it, so the students will be working on their phones, but they'll be talking to their compatriots over at the other campus via Teams, so it's not disturbing the whole dynamic of the room. So there's lots of different ways that you can still assess, you can still look at progress from students, no matter whether they're on campus with the teacher, they're at the other campus, or if they're even dialing in online. We've come up with a range of different assessment methods that allow us to do that.
That's brilliant. That's excellent. I'd love to hear from, I'm sorry, Dan, let's go to you and then we'll go to Crystal next, because I've got a question for her that I'd love to hear her thoughts on. But Dan, you go on first, yeah.
I was just going to say a quick one there about the kit looks impressive. What sort of costs are we looking at? And I'll just try to put it into perspective here, and for schools also. You'd imagine that a typical lecturer, obviously schools is higher cost, but in GFE, a typical lecturer is going to cost you around 68k a year with all the on costs, roughly 50 to 60 pound an hour or more. Okay, so the rooms, they cost me around 35k or something like that each to put them in, fully installed.
That's the high cost. I'll just make that clear. That's like the top cost.
Yeah, sorry. That's for my Rolls Royce model, if you like, in terms of saying to John and Ajenta, look, I want full room wrapped around the screens, all this functionality. So yeah, of course, that's the top end cost. But actually, that pales into insignificance now when I think about the amounts of lecturing costs I've saved. After year one's install, a capital outlay, it's done. And then you continue to make those savings year on year on year by not having to employ teachers that you may not even be able to get. So it's pretty clear that the initial cost and outlay is way outlaid, way sort of pales into insignificance once the use starts. And of course, yeah, the recent ones we've purchased from Ajenta, the sort of single screen, high quality camera, fantastic mic bar. I don't know what it's called. It's not a mic bar, whatever you call it, sound bar.
Sounds good, mic bar.
Yeah, mic bar.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, they're brilliant. They serve a very different purpose, and that is very much, students dialing in and us beaming out. Still fantastic. Still does what it says on the tin. They're a lot cheaper. but you know, I'm not going to start going.
No, that's fantastic and worth mentioning as well. So thank you. But yeah, I'd love to come to Christelle next. So, what was the biggest challenge in bringing the project to life, and how did you overcome it?
I think it probably links heavily into James's update from a teaching and learning perspective. Although from my side, it's operational, so it's getting it in situ, it's then bringing it to life, and it's ensuring that it's being used within the organisation. The users really are the main part of making that successful. So James and I have very much worked closely together, and I would say that relationship has been pivotal in the respect that James is very much teaching and learning, and that's his background, where I'm training and learning from a corporate angle, and so we can come together in a way that might look different from your sort of run-of-the-mill training package. So it is very much engagement, having the right conversations, making them feel safe. We're not going to throw them, you know, into an uncomfortable environment, letting them test, experiment, but showing them that they can be open and they can feed back. And that's as important to them getting in the room, is letting us know how they've experienced it. So operationalizing the concept comes through the users. So it very much is not just about ticking the boxes, it's about talking to the people and making sure that they understand why we're doing it and what the future picture is and how important it is to sort of move into this digital world.
Absolutely, yeah. It makes complete sense. And I guess another question, a follow-up question for that, and maybe one that James, you could come in on as well, would be how have teachers adapted to using the technology? Has their pedagogy had to significantly change due to how the product works? And how long does it take to become really confident using the technology that you have installed?
Yeah, so I can answer, or try and answer that. I mean, in terms of going in and using the technology, you can go in and use it straight away, and you can deliver as you've normally done. You can do your PowerPoints and you can question your students and throw out a few handouts, that sort of thing. But we wanted to try and steer our staff away from that. So in order to get them to be sort of really innovative, to use all those other bits and pieces that I was talking about, the interactive whiteboards, the other applications, that takes a little bit longer. Depends on the staff. I mean, we have put staff in that room who you wouldn't say are our most innovative, our most technologically adept teachers, and they've come on leaps and bounds, and it's really made them rethink their own pedagogy, which has been great for them. And they've really sort of taken to it, because you give them that opportunity, you put them in this amazing room, and they do adapt. It's just how it works. The students are some of the ones that actually guide them more so than we do, because the students are so up with the technology. They want to play around with it. They want to see what they can do with it. So they guide some of our staff along with us. When we're doing our training with them, the students will also push them that little bit further. So it depends on the member of staff. You can go in there, you can use it, do what you normally do, or you can adapt and you can change, and it takes a little bit of time. It depends how much effort, how much time they'll put into practicing, but yeah, hopefully that answers that.
Absolutely. It raises sorry, go on.
Sorry, Ellie. I mean, this is a different thing. I mean, it's basically, I'm seeing an awful lot about cost, etc. Just want to sort of talk again just about some of the lessons learned. We did have, like I say, a lot of my tech team, of course, as you'd imagine, we have a large tech team. First of all, telling me we could do that, we can create this for you, we can do that. We went down that road quite a lot, and unfortunately, due to lots of conflict and priorities and all that, we did make lots of costly mistakes. So once we eventually found this one, it did really work for us. And yes, I did notice there was a little bit of estate preparation, which was one of the questions in there. Basically, it was bought, for want of a better word, putting a bit of stud wall up to block out some windows. So we had a black box, effectively, or a grey box as it is. So there was a little bit of estate treatment that needed to be done first, but obviously Ajenta give you lots of advice on how to achieve all that. So sorry, I'm just seeing a lot of traffic around that.
No, it's great to engage with some of the questions, and thank you guys as well for watching, for asking some questions.
Can I just interject there and just
please do.
say a couple of important things from my perspective? Absolutely, cost. It is, nobody's got budgets, not just because of COVID, but because of many political and economical reasons. Cost is a barrier at the end of the day. But what we're trying to do across education just now, and hopefully we're instrumental in trying to do this, and we are creating programs, particularly in rural and disadvantaged areas across the whole of the UK, to try and reduce that attainment gap issue. And we're working in some pretty impoverished areas, and we do understand and appreciate that the cost is a barrier, and we've created it in such a way where we try to keep the costs as acceptable as possible in order to be able to democratize access to what we do. Yeah, at the end of the day, and Marta Mendez has, she's made an extremely important point, is pointing out, so big saving in teaching staff thanks to the technology. Are we creating a monopoly? At the end of the day, the last thing that we want in education is the Uber for teachers. The last thing that we want to do is kind of create an economic model to provide teachers into schools, for them to make money. If we don't want to create that model, I wouldn't be in this if we were trying to create that model. Absolutely. And there's lots of personal reasons from my perspective on that. I created this business to improve the delivery of access to education, and that's our core ethos as a business. We are working with some institutions that are seeing issues with equity across curriculum, not just enhancement in curriculum, but equity. How do we create equitable access across rural and disadvantaged areas? And the best way to do this is through technology. What we can do, you can do it free. VCing is free for schools. Yeah, it's free for schools. Yeah. Now,
well, I was going to say, why should schools and colleges, choose VCing over other systems and programs? It looks like you might be about to answer that question.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to go into the technical reasons. I mean, there's a security aspect of it, data privacy, encryption, all the rest of it, safeguarding for children. We can provide all that from preschool all the way to PhD. But what I wanted to focus on was, what we need to do, and there is costs needed and to be spent if you do want to create a model that does provide equitable access into the classroom. In order to do this, you do need to spend money on technology in order to provide and get return on investment from engagement and successful student pathways.
Yeah,
that's exactly. If I could give away everything for free, absolutely I would. But unfortunately, we can't. But we do want to make sure that we do democratize something in a fair and accessible way, so everybody can get access to it, be it rural disadvantaged or rich. We are striving to do that.
Yeah, just to come in on that again, don't forget, if you go back to the original problem was that students wanted certain bits of curriculum at the campuses, which are about 15 miles apart, but actually travel isn't so good. They wanted that curriculum, a teacher would leave, and because of the teaching shortage in the UK, we simply couldn't replace them. We couldn't attract them in an expensive area like the southeast, with a close proximity to London. So we couldn't find the teaching. So that means that group of students would either lose that choice of curriculum to get them to the next stages of the career or university, or still be able to access that using the technology. And that's why now I want to expand the model. And I'm saying to other colleges, well, in our area, we can't get teachers of this. So as a curriculum developer and leader of learning, I'm no longer able to offer that curriculum. However, if you could beam that in to me from one of your highly skilled teachers in Glasgow or Belfast, well, I'm able to do that. So then your education isn't based on a lottery. Now, obviously, if we had an abundance of teachers, clearly that'd be the first model. That's the gold standard, but we don't. And unfortunately, there is a huge lack of parity and quality with the standards of that. So at USP, we want our students to be able to access the best of the best. And that was one of the first things, and that's loud and clear in our strategy. And if that means me having to have it beamed in from wherever, so we can expand our curriculum to get people into careers in fintech, for example, which is a big demand in the area, or certain other areas, that's what we'll do. So yeah, it's not quite as cutthroat as saying, well, great, if you need one teacher. I couldn't get the teacher even if I tried. There's just
Sure. I think there's perhaps one burning question people might have, which is, a lot of schools and colleges have started using Teams now over time. Do you guys have a case for why not just use Teams for this?
Use Teams if you want. It's very good. We use Teams internally, but I mean, we're not in a competitive situation with Teams. We integrate and we provide. If you use Teams, we can integrate and provide pathways to integrate with it. That's not an issue. Some people prefer to do that. Where we're different on the kind of technology side, there's a couple of differences. We're on Janet. We provide a bit more security and data privacy. Provide end-to-end encryption across everything that we do, cryptographic sort of keys on it. We also provide the ability for it to be used by minors as well, because all our video traffic, which is end-to-end encrypted and encrypted at rest, is hosted in our own data centers, which are government-approved data centers within the UK. So there's that aspect of it. But we do allow Teams users to come into VC hosted classrooms, and when they do, we end-to-end encrypt those ends of the call as well. But it's also about the aspect of, if you want a little bit more immersive, high-quality video, then we can provide that up to 4K. In a room, it's that part. The last thing that we want to do is replace an existing ecosystem that you have within your organization. If you have a specific model, whether you use Moodle, Canvas, Desire to Learn, Alfresco, if you use Medial, Kaltura, if you use ClickView, if you use Teams, we can integrate with all of them. So we can create a model where we could be the glue that connects all of these different technologies together to make sure that the student pathway, from a UX perspective, a user experience and journey perspective, is a kind of flexible and simple and easy to use model. So, and there was a question somebody asked, Mike Buchanan. Hi, Mike. What about if you already have kit in the rooms? Yeah, so we can connect that to the VC platform. So if you, for example, have Polycom or Cisco, if you've got Teams or anything else, then you can connect that to the VC platform. The VC platform connects all the education institutions, so we can be the go-between between you and another organization. So, for example, on Teams, it means that you don't have to whitelist all these other organizations, because we already connect them all through our platform. Yeah? So that's the community aspect of VC, is allowing a collaborative approach to shared learning, shared teaching, shared resource, that kind of thing. So we don't compete with them, we support them. Yeah, absolutely. I hope that answered your question, Mike. If not, just give me a sad face emoticon or something.
Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. Well, I think we've got about 5 minutes left. So I'd love to just hear maybe some closing thoughts and observations from you guys. Perhaps we could kick off with Crystal. Do you want to give any final kind of closing thoughts?
I guess it's just sort of when people ask what it involves, there clearly is a roadmap that leads us from the vision that Dan's kindly set us at USP through to how we quality assure the teaching, right? And within that, there's lots of different strands. So it is important to engage in a twofold, which is the operationalizing it and the teaching and learning, which are the two elements that are going to form what we're looking to achieve from putting in a model of this kind. And I guess all I'd say is that if anyone is looking to do it, I'm more than happy to share the journey that we've traveled through. I'm not going to go into the detail now, but yeah, I'm more than happy to sort of talk through how we've done it, engagement, like I say, curriculum, IT, that infrastructure that we've put in place to ensure that we can resolve things quickly, and most importantly, the relationship that we have with Ajenta when it comes to new phases of the project, but also supporting the existing ones.
Absolutely.
Very important question. Very important question. What's the student response been? Do the students like it? Has there been increase in attendance? Has there been an increase in pass marks, things like that? Dan, Crystal?
Yeah, there has. I think I said before, didn't I, about the students' engagement, the students' buzz off it, because they're going into, if I talk the immersive room first, they're able to go into this fantastic space, and they've got the privilege of being able to do that and use multiple forms of multimedia, as opposed to arguably going into a standard traditional classroom when they've come to us learning from all these multiple platforms and being bombarded to then going into quite a static classroom and to adapt to traditional forms of learning. So yes, it has had a great impact. The lesser expensive, if you like, the one screen models has served us brilliantly now through the whole COVID thing. And actually, if you've got students who might have ordinarily been nervous and suffered anxiety, not wanted to return to campus after the pandemic, etc., they've still been able to engage seamlessly on the natural progression of classroom learning without having to disrupt the tutor's sequencing of the natural scheme of work and such likes. So it's proven that it's given our students so many options. And actually, I think, I was so pleased that we started on this journey and we already had a good base of infrastructure, because when the pandemic hit and when we went into the lockdown and all the things we're dealing with now, we were already quite a way ahead of the game. We were able to adapt relatively quickly, and it wasn't a huge step change for our people, which has meant we've just been able to carry on plowing on and keep that consistency of education going. So yeah, and I think that'd be my final wrap as well.
And I
Yeah,
think,
brilliant.
I think as
Absolutely.
well, from that side of things, in terms of our students, with our sort of career focused hat on, naturally and organically, it builds the digital skills that students are getting from those lessons, the encouragement of different types of learning, as well as our teachers, but thinking more so in terms of their future, their job roles, and actually the world in which they're going to eventually get into a job. It is pivotal to that, and having that on their CV to show that they've engaged in that type of learning it can only be an advantage.
Absolutely. And then I guess we've got a few more minutes, so let's go to James next. I'm just going to remind you guys watching quickly to just don't forget to download the case study, which includes a link to the original video that we played earlier in this session. It should be in the handout section, just on the side of your chat. But James, if we could just hear a closing statement from you as well.
Yeah, so in terms of teaching and learning, obviously you've seen the video, you've seen some of the pictures, you've heard us all talking about it, but to really get a feel for it is you need to see it in action. You need to really be there. You can talk to the students, you can talk to our staff. I mean, if anybody is interested, there'll be contact details for you to get in touch. But student feedback has been really, really positive. For me, the group that I'm most focused in is those students that aren't in the room with the teachers. And the questions I ask them are, how does this compare to being physically in classroom with your teachers? And the vast majority of responses we get are, we don't feel it's any different. It's not any better. It's not any worse. And that's kind of that, for me, that is good. That's perfect. I want them to feel like it is like being in a classroom with a teacher. So I'll leave it on that one.
Yeah. Lovely, that's brilliant. And then, yeah, John, if you'd like to kind of round it up for us.
So what we try to do is we're not trying to replace the teacher in the room. We're just trying to replicate that human experience and make it as, well, the word that Dan uses is immersive, but the word that I'd like to use is natural, and that's the theme of what our focus is. With the technology that we use in that classroom, we want to maintain consistency, enhance and retain engagement and interaction, but most importantly, we want to create a community across a platform that would allow a collaborative approach to shared teaching and learning from within a campus, across a district, but globally. And VCN allows you to bring in content providers and other teaching resource and connections with other schools in other parts of the world, places like China and Sri Lanka and all the rest of it, So creating a common community that allows a shared learning kind of model is what our focus is, basically. So that's everything from me. I do have a tendency of going off on tangents, and I'm quite proud of myself today. I've stuck to the point, more or less. Yeah. But if there's anything that anybody else needs at any one point, just where we are, reach out.
Absolutely, and thank you guys all so much for taking part. It's been really great to have our lovely speakers here today, and also everybody who has attended and is in the chat has been fantastic. So thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.